This is the camera that you're gonna pay over 5 grand for only a Super 35 4K sensor. Sure, you can get 4K 120, but you can't do it in RAW. That display, super small. Not to mention, it's incredibly dim. You can barely see it in the sunlight. And why can't brands like Canon and Sony and Panasonic understand that their camera menu systems are some of the worst designs I think I've ever seen? God, I just don't get why so many people like this camera. So everything that I yelled passionately about in the beginning of this video truly was my con list for this camera. Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you resolution is the most important thing by any means. Nowadays, to spend over 5 grand for a camera body and only have 4K on a Super 35 sensor isn't necessarily raising the bar. And codecs on cameras like this always bug me, because on cameras like my Blackmagic, I can pretty much choose B-RAW for everything. Even if I'm in 2.8K windowed 120, it's still B-RAW. Maybe my muscle memory has just been tied to Blackmagic for too long and that's just an unfair bias. I'll accept that one if you disagree with it. But the thing I don't think we can disagree on is the fact that the screen is really small. I understand, like, I don't know the fix for it on this camera. I mean, if we look at the back, you have a very big battery down here, and battery life on this camera is pretty incredible. Every day that I took this out to shoot, I wasn't doing all day crazy, you know, film sets or anything, but I happily left the house with my family with one battery, knowing I was gonna be good for the afternoon out, and I never once had a battery die on me. And so with that taking up a healthy amount of space on the bottom half of the camera, I understand why this is the largest screen. It's just really sad because, again, if I compare it to my Pocket 6K Pro with a, I believe, 5 or 5.5 inch screen, it's incredibly bright. I believe at 1,000 nits. I don't even know what nits this has, but it needs some more nits. In bright daylight, I could not see if I had nailed focus, and in my anamorphic video that I recently released, there was a number of shots that were just quite a bit out of focus. And that also transitions to the bad menu system. The entire 2 weeks that I've had this camera, admittedly, I have not been able to get focus peaking to work right. I've gone in the menus, I've enabled focus peaking. It seems to be on the setting that I'd want. Every time I hit the peaking button on the side of the camera, it almost looks like the contrast on the screen changed, but there's no like red or green or any colored lines that's showing up. I'm sure it's capable of that, and I just don't have the setting right, but it's just further proof that, like, someone who has never used cinema cameras before, I promise you, if they know the terminology, if they know what focus peaking was, and you handed them these two cameras, they're going to figure out how to turn on focus peaking on this one astronomically faster than on this camera. But with all of that out of the way, wow, the final image that you get with this camera, you know, it makes the cons not look so conny. That's not even a word! The feeling in the hand is exactly what I wish, and what I think every pocket camera owner wishes the Blackmagic pocket camera felt like. Yes, we all want the cube Blackmagic, but if they're to stick with this like DSLR kind of, you know, the integrated grip design choice, from materials to the overall design, this is the hybrid of a DSLR mirrorless and a cube shaped cinema camera, because it's got a fat back here, but you still have the integrated handle. It is definitely a good couple inches shorter in width than the pocket camera, which makes it a lot more gimbal friendly. This is a very wide camera, and it's very hard to balance on a lot of consumer gimbals, or at least it used to be. This just feels really tight in the hands, feels just, I love the design of this camera. Speaking of gimbals, it's even got great mounting points. Not only do we have the dual quarter 20s, so you can have no twisting issues on a camera plate, you can actually take out this adapter and you have a 3/8 thread, but you also have two quarter 20s on the sides, which would allow you to offset on a gimbal maybe, or any sort of different plate. You have a lot of mounting options without even needing a cage. Also, for run and gun, documentary, guerrilla filmmaking, or parent filmmakers, the start and stop of this camera is also very impressive considering it's, you know, in the cinema camera class. When you turn it on, honestly, within like 2 seconds, you can start recording. It is very, very quick, which is nice to see and kind of really satisfying on and off switch, if I'm being honest. The built-in NDs are great. It's got loads of custom buttons. I think it's got like 12 of them that you can map to various different settings. You got dual card slots. Both of them are SDXC. I love, love, love how all of the ports have individual caps on them. I don't like when cameras have so many ports under one flap, because so much of the time you're just using one port, but then you expose to the elements all of the other ports under that flap. Whereas here, basically every single one has its own thing. So, oh, I want to use this. I don't think I meant to fully take it off, but there we go. Say I just wanted to use this mini XLR port. Now everything else is still covered. And you do have good recording options. Obviously you got the normal frame rates and stuff. Now you guys know me, I love shooting in RAW. You get the benefits of changing things like white balance and post. But to be honest, I'm a sucker, okay? I haven't had 4K 120 on many of my personal cameras before, and so I got a little spoiled. I didn't want to take this out on gimbals and big rigs. I wanted to be really quick and nimble and just enjoy this camera experience. And so yeah, a lot of the sample footage is just straight up 4K 120, and it looks great. But do you know why it looks so great? Do you know what is the single selling point of this camera, in my opinion? Come here. It's the same reason that the original pocket camera was so revered by so many people, especially for the time, which by the way was only a 1080p HD camera, and at the time people enjoyed the look of that camera more than its 4K competitors. And that's because of dynamic range, the spec that I personally hold most dear to my heart. And this thing has 16 plus stops of advertised dynamic range, and I threw an advertise there because that's what's on the paper. So for example, this guy right here is 13 stops, but when I've seen people test it, it's usually around 11 and a half, maybe 12, depending what ISO you're on. 16 plus stops is airy and red level territory, and it just makes everything you shoot so nice. The other thing, which I knew was going to be good because I've edited Canon footage over the years for various different projects, their color science, their noise levels are just so dreamy. Like, you don't even have to really color grade a lot of the clip. Like, look at this footage right here. I'm not touching these clips in post. They just look great right out of camera, or if you shoot in RAW and log, you just throw on the simple Rec 709 conversion. Canon colors, they just have their science down. It naturally has a warmer tone to it, but it's a very pleasing warm tone. A lot of times on cameras that I think could use a little bit more color science-y work to them, no offense DJI, you know, it looks good, but it takes some finessing to really get skin tones and everything to at least the way I like the look. And here, it just looks great out of the box. Their autofocus for autofocus lenses are also incredible. Again, I know this isn't news to anyone who's used it before, but if you are a fellow Blackmagic owner and maybe this is one of the cameras you've been debating switching to because you want autofocus, the autofocus on this camera is incredible. While I certainly had my frustrations, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, with this camera, overall I have very much enjoyed my experience the past couple of weeks playing with it. I just want to say a quick thank you to Canon for sending this camera out for a couple of weeks. There was no obligation to make any sort of content or video of any kind. They said if you just want to play with it, test it out, give us some feedback on what you like and don't like, that's totally fine. So this is not a sponsored video, and while I certainly have some clear cons to the camera, overall I've been very happy with my experience. So thank you all for watching, and I would love to hear your comments down below what you think about the Canon C70. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you get subscribed because NAB's in a handful of weeks, and better believe I'm gonna be there testing out all new cameras, talking about new tech in the filmmaking world. So yeah, make sure you get subscribed. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.